Shem Kevod Malkuto Leholam Vayed. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and ever. All right, in the Vahavtah. Vahavtah et Yahovah Elohecha v'kol lavka uv'kol lavshika uv'kol neodecha v'hayu hadevarim ha'ele asher anoki matzadoka hayom alvavecha v'shivartam lavadecha v'divartam v'shiftika v'evtecha uv'lektika v'derek uv'shabaka uv'komecha uv'shartam leo alidecha v'hayu letokot bein eneka uv'tartam amazuzo betecha uv'sharaka. And you shall love Yahovah your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And have these words which I command you this day be upon your heart. And you shall teach them diligently to your children, and speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you retire, and when you arise. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and let them be frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. Vahavtah le'recha kamocha, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Blessing over the children. Justin, I don't know if you can hear it, but it's doing that cutting in and out thing on my mic right then. Yeah. So it might be that the noise gate or compressor's like too high or something. All right. All right. Yahovah bless you and keep you. Yahovah cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahovah turn his face towards you and give you peace. For the daughters, blessed are you, Yahovah, of Yahovah, my daughter, for you have been kind and generous. Yahovah is your Elohim, and his people are your people. May all people know of certainty that you are a virtuous daughter. And for the sons, may Yahovah make you like Ephraim and Manasseh, and may you be a man after Yahovah's own heart. May you be bold and courageous, leading everyone under your influence in the ways of Yahovah.
O bow, may your mouth speak with wisdom. May your heart meditate with reverence. May your hands do the work Elohim has given you. May your feet hasten to follow the path that Yahovah has laid out for your life. May your entire life be fruitful. May Yahovah's full will for you be accomplished in your life. May the spirit of Yahovah, the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and power, the spirit of knowledge and the fear of Yahovah be upon you. May the grace of Yeshua HaMashiach, the love of Elohim, and the fellowship of the Ruach HaKadosh be upon you now and forever. Amen.
No, I was just.
You can.
If you want, I was using my time.
Your time
while
wisely.
I was waiting on you.
All right, so our reading plan this week. I know, but it's cutting in and out, like you said, real bad.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. So, our reading plan has Psalm 7 and 27, but I picked Psalm 27 particularly because I realized it was actually one of my favorite songs, which we'll listen to later, is, wow, that's so wild how that does it.
Well, talk consistent and I'm going to try to figure it out.
Okay. So, one of my favorite songs, right? Rock and roll song. Go figure. I'm going to get in a lot of trouble today. No, I'm just kidding. It's POD. You know, they're definitely a more obviously believing group of famous musicians. What do you think? Should I step away from the mic to read or keep going?
I'm not going to be able to fix it if I can't hear it. So.
Okay. But I'm not doing it online, am I? I'm very clear online. No, it's going in. Oh, really? Okay, well, it looks like it's getting better. Hello? All right. So, without further ado, Psalm 27. Yehovah is my light and salvation. Whom do I need to fear? Yehovah is a stronghold of my life. Of whom should I be afraid? When evildoers assailed me to devour my flesh, my adversaries and foes, they stumble and fail. If an army encamps against me, my heart will not fear. If war breaks out against me, even then I will keep trusting. Just one thing I have asked of Yehovah, only this will I seek, to live in the house of Yehovah all the days of my life, to see the beauty of Yehovah and visit in his temple. For he will conceal me in his shelter in the day of trouble. He will hide me in the folds of his tent, and he will set me high on a rock. Then my head will be lifted up above my surrounding foes, and I will offer in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy. I will sing praises to Yehovah. Listen, Yehovah, to my voice when I cry. Show favor to me and answer me. My heart said of you, seek my face. Your face, Yehovah, I will seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You are my help. Don't abandon me. Don't leave me, God, my Savior. Even though my father and mother have left me, Yehovah will care for me. Teach me your way, Yehovah. Lead me on the level path because of my enemies. Don't give me up to the whims of my foes, for false witnesses have risen against me. Also those who are breathing violence. If I hadn't believed that I would see Yehovah's goodness in the land of the living, put your hope in Yehovah, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Yes, put your hope in Yehovah. Did y'all catch it? My children, did you hear it? You'll see. I'll play the song for everybody in a minute. It's really good. Figure it out.
All right. Let's sing.
You take it off of Kai's mic too?
I didn't check hers.
So what is it?
The noise gate. If hers is doing it, just turn the noise gate on. Just click on it. The gate. All right, you ready? This first song's kind of lively, so liven up. Come, let us go up. Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord. Come, let us go up. Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord. La, 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 la. Who can ascend this holy hill? Who can approach his holy place? Only the one with clean hands and a pure heart. Who can ascend Be lifted up, O ancient doors, so that the King of glory may enter in. Nations will come to celebrate. Adonai will teach us his ways, and the God of Israel will send the rain. Come, let us go up. Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord. Come, let us go up. Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord. Come, let us go up. Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord. Come, let us go up. Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord. And the law will go out from Zion, from Jerusalem his word. All creation will know your name, forever your praises proclaim. And the law will go out from Zion, from Jerusalem his word. All creation will know your name, forever your praises proclaim. Come, let us go up. Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord. Come, let us go up. Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord. Come, let us go up. Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord. Come, let us go up. Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord. Lie, 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 lie. Who can ascend his holy hill? Who can approach his holy place? Only the ones who are washed by the Lamb. Let's see. One second, I have the wrong. I thought I checked it and it was fine a minute ago. This would be the first time we played this song, but y'all might have heard us playing it earlier when we were practicing. But and I may have the lyrics wrong in the wrong order. I'm sorry, I meant to fix it, but I think I put them in the wrong order. So be aware. I will feast at the table of the Lord. I will feast at the table of the Lord. I won't hunger anymore at his table. I will feast at the table of the Lord. I will feast at the table of the Lord. I won't hunger anymore at his table. Come on, ye weary, come and find. His yoke is easy, his burden light. He is able, he will restore at the table of the Lord. to the table of the Lord. He says, come just as you are to his table. Mighty One, Mighty One, we worship you. Mighty One, Mighty One, we worship you. For I've tasted and seen your goodness, and I've stood in the power of your presence. For I felt the depth of your mercy. Oh, how your love, it always surrounds me. Mighty One, Mighty One, we worship you. Mighty One, Mighty One, we worship you. For I've tasted and seen your goodness, and I stood in the power of your presence. For I felt the depths of your mercy. Oh, how your love, it always surrounds me. For I've tasted and seen your goodness. Oh, and I've stood in the power of your presence. For I have felt the depths of your mercy. Oh, how your love, it always surrounds me. For you alone are worthy of the highest praise and all my love. For you alone are worthy of the highest praise and all my love. For you alone are worthy of the highest praise and all my love. For you alone are worthy of the highest praise and all my love. For I tasted and seen your goodness, and I stood in the power of your presence. For I felt the depths of your mercy. Oh, how your love, it always surrounds me. Mighty One, Mighty One, we worship you. Mighty One, Mighty One, we worship you. is devoted, like a ring of solid gold, like a vow that is tested, like a covenant of old. Your love is enduring through the winter rain and beyond the horizon, with mercy for today. Faithful you have been, faithful you will be. You pledge yourself to me, and that's why I sing. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips. You father the orphan, your kindness makes us whole. You shoulder our weakness, and your strength becomes our own. You're making me like you, clothing me in white, bringing beauty from ashes. For you will have your bride, free from all her guilt, and rid of all her shame, and known by her true name. And it's why I sing. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips. You will be praised, and you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, and you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. And it's why I sing. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips. And you will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, and you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. I'm not afraid. Nothing is better than you. Heavenly Father, we thank you for all that you are. You are just everything, as Nolan said earlier, the creator of the cosmos, the creator of all things, the one who has his hand wrapped around this world, and everything we have is owed to you, and we can rely on you for everything we need, and just all of that. We praise you for who you are. We praise you for giving us your word, for giving us your revelation to show us who you are, and we praise you, and we thank you for allowing us to have this time today to study your word and to grow closer to you and to worship you corporately and to and just to draw closer to you all together. And we thank you, Lord. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. You gonna cut out? Yeah, I want to cut out. Whatever you need me to do.
Matt, put the headphones on. Turn your room mic up. Ready? Got room mic turned up?
Yep.
Might want to. Might want to open up your Bibles and follow along with the song in Psalm 27 that I just read. Or you can just hear it. Take your ism, stay clear. Give you what you want here. No, you won't hear. And when it's cool in the house, stand clear. How you feel in the house, stand clear. If God is for me, tell me who I gon' fear. No, I won't fear. And God will take up these every my love. And God the wise if we blessings from above. Hashem will Abraham will show me the way. I go down on my knees and this is what I pray. My God. Strength of my life, whom shall I dread? When them evildoers approach to devour my flesh. That song, oh, yeah, can you hear me? Do. Nope, I don't think so. Is that too loud, everybody? You guys good back there? All right, awesome. I actually went to that concert, to the POD concert. Unfortunately, I had to go see POD one time, and then I had to go see Matisyahu a completely different time. Matisyahu was for those who may not know, some of the older folks not know who Matisyahu is.
The singer,
This rapper, the singer, the guy that was singing in that song. He was a Hasidic Jew who, he was actually just a Jewish boy from White Plains, New York. Matt, turn me down just a little bit. I think I'm a little much. Can you hear me online good though? Make sure. Okay. He's a young Jewish boy from White Plains, New York. Didn't grow up Orthodox. Actually partied, was in the party scene, clubs, raves, drugs, all the lights, all the electronic music, craziness stuff, right, of my generation. And realized, you laughing back there? No, I was not. All of my friends were. They all did this weird stuff with their hands and dancing, and sometimes they throw lights around, and yeah, bunch of weird stuff. Don't think that means I was innocent. I was into my own bad things. That's right. Just wiggling. So, anyways, the point is that he realized that his life was going nowhere, and decided that he was going to start going back to the faith of his ancestors, of some of his family members. So he started going to Shiva, and then shortly became very enamored with particular rabbis, and started to really, really follow. And I believe the way the story goes is he moved to Jerusalem for a little while, I think, and literally like hat, the whole 9 yards, right? And then he said to one of his rabbis, like, I feel like I need to go back and start doing music again. And he was like, absolutely. He's like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, all of it, right? He's like, It took him a couple years before he shaved his head and started doing the light stuff again, right? But for the longest time, he's been in a bunch of videos with some famous people, including these guys here. POD's pretty famous. And this song, I love it. And I realized today, like I told you, if you listen to it and you listen to the lyrics a couple of times, you'll see in multiple spots he's quoting Psalm 27. Basically used the whole psalm to create his lyrics for this one. And it's called Strength of My Life. It's a good song. And then POD, I saw them in this concert called Testify was the name of that album that song came from. And they had another guy singing Matisyahu's part up on the stage, but it was pretty awesome. It was a great concert. I believe you were pregnant at the time, right? Was that the concert with all the hard rock Christian bands? Pregnant with Kinsey? Yeah, Kinsey got her picture taken with a group called Maylene and the Sons of Disaster. Okay? She got her picture taken in the womb. They're hilarious. Yeah. Yeah, just for the fun of it. But anyways, yeah, so we got to see them and another Christian group called Pillar, and it was a lot of fun. And POD they were great. But it was probably pretty awesome for me that two naturally things that I was in love with and that I liked music-wise came together on an album. And so my whole family has had to endure listening to that song over and over and over and over again. And little did I know, if I would have known it was Psalm 27, I would have been like, we're just listening to the Bible. What? Leave me alone, But I didn't realize that. Silly me. Okay, guys. All that story time, fun, right? We got the faithful crowd here today. This is Olive Tree Fellowship. Maybe, yeah, you live here, so do I. It doesn't work. Maybe we're only missing 2 knuckleheads. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Say that. 2 particulars that have been there since the beginning. Sarah, 3? Oh, good. I see what you're saying. I do. You're right. She can be a knucklehead today, too. Am I good on the camera also? All right? I don't want to be off and weird. What? Funny, Miss Becky. All right, so today's... Huh? Today's message is remembered and heard. All right? Blessings, problems is the subtitle. The two don't have a whole lot to do with each other, but they're in the same stories as we go through. Blessings, problems. I actually was going to call it blessing suckers at one point, and I was thinking, I was going to put a picture of, instead of a lamprey on a shark, that's a lamprey on a shark, I was going to put a picture of Dracula up there and be like, I want to suck your blessings, right? Because that's what our Torah story is today. But instead, I decided to show the parasite that is a lamprey, right? A lot of people like to say they have a symbiotic relationship. They do, but not really. The lamprey is hurting the shark, trust me. And if they stay on them for long and the shark doesn't get them off of them, they could eat a hole into their skin. So it's not a good thing entirely. I was taught wrong growing up, let's just say that. They worked together for a little while for a short period of time. If anybody knows what we're talking about today in the Torah. But then they need to separate, okay? Yeah. Nope. That is not true. Okay, here's this is Laban and Jacob having a conversation, our English painting, right? See the English hound down there at the bottom? Right? But this is a beautiful painting with some sheep and Jacob and Laban having a conversation, and we're going to talk about that today for sure. So we start off in our reading starts off in Genesis chapter 30, verse 22, and this is the theme. It's the theme of our message today. If I had a message, if I was preaching something in the preaching, then God remembered Rachel. Think about what that means, Sit there, like I like to say, let's marinate on that for just a second. God remembered Rachel. And other portions in the future and what we've read recently, we have some situations where Scripture says, and God remembered, right? And God gave heed to her and opened her womb. So she conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. She named him Joseph, saying, may Yehovah give me another son. So she was like, blessings. Keep bringing them. You heard me. You remembered me. I want another one. Anything wrong with that? I don't think so. I think we're supposed to ask and expect to receive. I don't think she was being selfish. So at this point, at this birth of Joseph, Rachel being remembered, Jacob says, it's time to go. Right? Why did he say that? Like, why is he now coming to Laban being like, I'm done with you. I got to go. We got to get out of here. I got to have my own, my own thing, right? Right here, it doesn't really tell us. We'll get to it in just a second. It doesn't tell us in chapter 20. You can offer up a bunch of ideas, but he's just probably getting annoyed with Laban and Laban's family, and he feels like he needs to do something else. What has he got on the horizon coming up? What's he worried about as far as going home? Kenzie, what's Jacob worried about? Even with all these things that he's got going for him now, with all these children, it looks like he's just going to be blessed and just, prosperous. What does he got to worry about in the future? What did he leave? His brother. What's his brother's name? Jacob and? Seriously? Ava? Yeah, what comes that? Starts with an E. Esau. Just say it, Kenzie. Yes, Jacob and Esau. So he's not necessarily. So that's another reason why I asked this question when he's this is where he starts to say it's time to go. It's not like he's like, and we'll see in future portions, he's not really courageous in the sense of, I want to go face my brother, right? He's actually really scared. Okay, we'll see that here in a second. Go ahead, Miss Becky. You had a point to.
She's just had Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's calm.
No.
She can leave her family.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. And actually,
Because there's somebody to take care of her, and she doesn't need her family around.
That's right. So Joseph, And we'll see this conversation happens in a second. You're absolutely correct in the sense that he has to convince them to leave, right? And they get convinced. But that's a good point. It's a really good point.
Women of that day were very, what I'm reading, if you didn't have a son to take care of you, if that man dies,
Yep.
you were like a dog at the mercy of society.
That's right. She needed more family is what she needed, right? And if she was going to leave her family. I agree. That's a good point.
Unless you went to college without an education.
They didn't have that back then. All right. So he's like, hey, look, I need pay for my work thus far. And Laban, man, he enters into another sneaky contract of Laban's. But this time Jacob's going to try to get the upper hand. And he's like, listen, I'm going to take the spotted, non-solid color, white especially, if they were black, spotted, or what does it say, striped, essentially, right? I'm going to take those sheep out. I'm going to separate them. I'm going to go over here and take care of them. They're going to be my pay for all the things I've done for you. And Laban's like, okay, I can see that. So he goes 3 miles away, but he lets his family take care of that flock, his flock, while he takes care of Laban's flock. Now we get this interesting piece here about the breeding methods that he uses. Okay? He takes some sticks and he strips them where they're colored, right? White and brown. And he puts them in the water trough. And for some reason, this causes some fertility to happen between the sheep that he wants, the male goats and the female goats, and the female sheep and the male sheep, and he wants the strong ones to breed. So these sticks somehow cause this to happen. But whenever Laban's sheep come, he takes away the sticks so that they don't increase in number, especially if they're the strong ones. He lets the weak ones mate and not the strong ones, so that Laban's flock is not as strong as his. Go ahead, Ms. Becky.
I did some research. Those particular species, when you do what he did,
Yep.
it helps promote good health in the livestock that are drinking that water, especially reproductive health.
So,
Like, it keeps them healthy, so they're very fertile.
yeah, okay. And that was the thing too. I looked. I didn't see that. I didn't because I didn't dig that deep, right? But you got to think about it. It calls out specific species of branches that he puts in. There's another idea out there that says that it actually caused if they looked up and they saw the branch in different colors, it would cause the female sheep to sort of freak out a little bit, lose attention. That way the male sheep could get to them sooner and quicker, right? So they were distracted. That was another theory that was out there. That was a more rabbinical type theory. It was funny. I thought that was funny. But anyways, the point is, and for all of my young people's sake, it's one of those stories that it's an interesting story in the fact that Jacob takes these branches of these different types of trees, puts them in the water, and somehow that makes these sheep want to mate, right? And he controls that process in making his flock stronger and bigger, and Laban's flock not as strong and smaller, okay? Then he goes on, right, to basically say it was an angel that told him how to do this. So that's another interesting piece. He seems to be giving credit to this angel that told him, and he also kind of brags in a sense where he's like, listen, it don't matter if you would have told me take these sheep instead of those sheep, right? I still would have been blessed, and you would have, had to watch me get more blessed and more blessed. Basically what he tells Laban. Pretty interesting conversation. So going back to my question about why they're leaving, okay, so we got this, he's getting a bunch of sheep, and it says that he's getting prosperous. He's got or servants, camels, and goats and sheep, right? He's got a bunch of stuff. Jacob is blessed, right? His flock is huge and big. His family's big. It's just obvious. And at some point, Laban definitely gives credit, and this is what I was talking about the blessings problem. Laban gives credit to Jacob for his blessings, just like Abimelech gave Abraham credit. And we'll see this again and again. And this is where this blessings problems comes into play, right? How long are you supposed to allow that lamprey to suck off of you and to eat your flesh? Okay, and I know it sounds harsh and sounds crazy, but Joseph is Jacob his blessings are transferable to the rest of the world. And that's supposed to happen. That's the prophecy, right? All nations shall be blessed because of you. And we see micro fulfillments of that throughout all of history, specifically scriptural history. When Israel's doing the right thing, others are blessed. But the problem is, those others don't always have the best interest, right? What Abimelech was trouble. His people were trouble, right? Lot and his people, with Abraham blessing and Lot getting that, his men started to act like they were owed something because of this blessing and got in fights with Abraham's men, right? And Lot chose the best land. Abraham gave it to him, gave him the option to choose, right? And we know he got in trouble with Sodom and Gomorrah. Just in different places in this story, in his story, we're going to find that the blessing other nations is a good thing and a bad thing. And the reason... Say what?
Tesla and Edison.
Oh, whoa, yes. I mean, you're talking about them being together and one influencing the other type deal?
Tesla discovered what was more successful, my understanding, and he wanted it to be made available to the whole world for free. Edison capitalized on some of his research for money.
Oh, yeah. But I'm going kind of the different direction than that. I'm saying, and I'm with you with what Tesla did, I'm saying that in that, even in that case, in that scenario you draw, Israel, I don't believe, Jacob specifically here, is not necessarily supposed to stick around in certain places and hang around with certain people and just give that blessing away freely. And in this case specifically, God says in our reading, chapter 31, verse 3. Look at it with me. It says, Then Jehovah said to Jacob, Return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. And at this point, right now, we're not talking about whether or not he's comfortable going, whether or not he's aggravated with Laban, whether or not Joseph's born and Rachel's comfortable with leaving. Now he can convince all the wives. We're talking God the Father said go, just like he told Abraham and everything. So if Jacob wants to continue to be blessed, he better obey, for sure. So I got written here that I called it, for all you young people, all you hipsters, Jacob's like, okay, it's time to, if it wasn't time before, it's time to dip out. Is that too old? Am I going like Facebook, Twitter here? Yeah, dip out's not used anymore. Well, anyways, my generation would have said it's time to dip out. Bounce, okay, yeah. Jacob's like, it's time to bounce. Let's get out of here. He convinces, say what?
I said, was that in the 50s or the 40s?
Which one, the bounce?
I never even heard that one.
Dip out?
Okay,
Yeah, that's more 90s.
Oh, 90s. We didn't say dip out. We just say it's time to
Bug out.
Bug out? Yeah, I like that. Good, from Vietnam. Bug out. We got to go. We had to hit the road. We turned the bug out into going crazy years later. I'm about to bug out. So Jacob, going back to what we were just talking about, that Miss Becky brought up, Jacob now, everything has happened. He's got his flocks. He has kind of gotten some payback now with Laban. And he feels comfortable, and he's able to look at the wives and be like, look, we got everything we need. Let's go. Okay? And the wives say, yeah, what else do we have here? Our father, and it kind of goes to the point again. They basically say, our father ain't got anything over us. So basically what Jacob has done now has made them realize, hey, our little thing and what we got is better than what he's got anyways. Why would we stay here? There's no more reason to be here. Going back to even the idea of Joseph being born and now she's going to be taken care of. They're actually like, big and good here, small and weak there. Yeah, we don't want that. Let's go. He's right. We got to leave. So they leave when Laban and his family are shearing sheep. They get out of they dip out like in the not so much in the dark of night, but when Laban's not looking, they leave. Laban of course gets upset. He chases them down. He makes it about somebody. First of all, he makes it about somebody stealing his stuff to include specifically some household idols, right? And that somebody took him. Do you know who took him? Anybody know the story? Young people, dig in. Who took the household idol? Who stole it? No? Rachel. That's right. All the cheaters back there in the back reading along. It's like trivia. At trivia night. Who's using their phone? The booth in the corner over there that nobody can see. That's who's using their phone. Right? So Rachel steals a household idol. And I want us to stop here for just a second. Not long, but I want you to think about it and think about what happens here. Laban shows up. He's mad. Right? He's looking and he's accusing. Yep. All right, so listen. He's accusing them of thieving. He goes around the tent to find and look for everything to try to find his idol. He can't find it because Rachel's sitting on it. And then she lies to her father and says, while she's sitting on this household idol, she says, you don't want to come near me because I've got my womanhood time, right? And so Dad's like, whatever, okay. And he's still piffling around, looking all around each of the tents. And he doesn't find it, and he comes out. And so now Jacob's got a leg to stand on, and Jacob's like, so what are you accusing me of? Now, before that happened, Laban said, you stole my stuff. And Jacob said, if anybody in this camp has stole your stuff, they will die. Came right out of his mouth. Remember, for us especially today, the access, I've talked about this before, right? The access and the increase of like even the ability for like the whole, like we talk about, we're a tabernacle, like all the power in our words, laying on of hands, healing, miracles, signs and wonders following, right? Don't forget Ananias and Sapphira. Okay? Your words have power. Your actions have power. And I'm not saying Rachel got punished because she stole the idol. I'm saying Jacob spoke the death over Rachel. Basically put a curse on her. Because he's, again, kind of like we've seen in some other stories, first thing that comes out of my front door is dead. Right? Shut up. I mean, come on. How, and I tell myself this. I look at myself in the mirror and say, did I just really say that? Did I really do that? Or wherever I'm at, and if I don't even have a mirror, I'm kind of like, oh my goodness, I can't believe. What am I saying? Right? We do it. We're real careful. We're careful. I'm going to say real careful. We're careful in our family. It's something we've talked about forever. Because I came from the name it, claim it, Pentecostal charismatic group. And we have always believed words have power, both good and bad type deal. And so, but watch what you say. And there's nothing in Scripture I'm drawing a correlation I personally believe in. Okay? It's not in the Bible there, but some of the rabbis agree too, and I'm not saying that's necessarily always, the best thing to carry around with you, but literally, she stole it. He said whoever stole it dies. Rachel dies way too young compared to Leah and everybody else and the rest of the family.
Was Rachel still worshiping these idols all this time?
So,
That's why she was infertile?
Okay, that's another good point. Right. And here we have God remembered Rachel, but he remembered her while she's still trying to steal idols from Laban. You know what I'm saying? Like, she still got it in her heart. A lot of the commentary that I looked at basically says that these wouldn't have necessarily been your run-of-the-mill like household idols. It probably would have been, especially for these Bedouin groups, there would have been a lot of still not right, still an idol, still not okay. I'm not trying to take away from it, but it would have been like some other like Spanish groups were of ancient Spain and some other places, right? That they would Bedouins type. They would. It's kind of like not worshiping the dead, but remembering the dead. It was, like, a little statue that represents somebody that's passed that you want to remember and maybe call on to help you. I'm going to get in trouble. Not by any of you, but YouTube's coming for me. I know it. I'm not going to say it, but you guys probably know what I'm talking about. Okay? Some people do that still today in certain groups. I'm not saying it. Little statues of people that have died and passed away, right? That kind of thing. They think the scholars and rabbinical sources, think that's probably what she had, was like basically a small little reminder of somebody who had died. So kind of like I can still talk to it. it still can communicate to me, right? So even a little bit more intricate than just, oh, that's a statue of Baal, right? It was, no, that's Aunt Josephine, right? And I can talk to her and she will talk back to me, right? Very forbidden, even probably more awkward in some cases. Yes, ma'am.
We've also heard teachings, Rabbi, that said that these also had to do with the, like, deed, ownership of the property. That
Oh, yeah?
archaeological evidence has shown that there were
Okay.
some of these that, but I couldn't figure, you know,
So that would have been reason why Laban would have been so angry and trying to find, because it was like his deed to the land. That's cool. I've never heard that before.
The local customs and
Mm-hmm.
traditions.
You trying to remember?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I've never heard that. That's cool. And I didn't read it today, for sure, in some of the commentary. But either way, Rachel's got the household idol. I'm not saying you can't keep looking, David. Let me know what you find.
We have it now, but it's on a sheet of paper.
That's true. I don't believe that it's my, grandfather or grandmother or anybody, and it's not going to talk back to me. But that might have been their customs back then, back in the day. Okay. So, watch your mouth. Watch what you say, especially as the head of a household. And I think that's true regardless of whether or not there's a connection here or not. Regardless of what I believe. Covenant meal so finally, Jacob, gets, Laban doesn't have any proof that, this important thing was stolen, right? Could possibly even be the deed to his property. That's an interesting thought. Right? So Jacob's got a leg to stand on, and then he comes back with, listen, for 20 years, I have served you, and everything you've gotten because you're blessed because I'm with you, right? Here we got this blessings problems again, right? And Laban don't want to let go, right? Like on that shark, that lamprey doesn't want to let go, right? He doesn't want to let go, and he definitely wants to keep that blessing around. But as you see in a lot of situations, circumstances, and conversations here, you can get this feeling like Abimelech, right, and any of these other people that recognize the blessing of God's people and they want them to stick around and be near them, right, or they want them to be cursed because they realize they're naturally blessed. Like if they do want a piece of that blessing, they want it on their terms. Because what's the next thing Laban says, right, as he kind of gets angry, even though he admits that you bless me, this is my daughter. These are my children, including the grandchildren. Now, grandparents, watch out. All right, put you in your place. My grandparents, never mind. I'm not going to say that. My mother, my mother and my wife's mother have at many times been like, this is almost like, this is my children. I'm like, this ain't your children. They're my children. Get out of here. I was your child. You had a chance. You're done now. No, I'm just kidding. I was not that way. I do not dishonor my parents like that, including my wife's parents. But that's what Laban was doing. He was like the grandpa who was saying, no, all of this you got is mine. It came from me. And technically, for all you grandparents, you can get a leg up, right? It did come from you. And you can be like, you wouldn't be here if you would be nothing. I did this, right? Which I've heard before too. In my correction. Either way, they're having this father-son-in-law conversation, and Laban gives in, and he's like, okay, look, here, let's make a covenant together. And then even in the covenant, Laban tries to keep on holding on to that blessing, because he says, let the Mizpah covenant is basically let God continue to bless us the same way, even though we're apart. So Laban's really laying it on, and he's like, man, we're going to build some statues and some pillars, and we're going to have a meal, and that's what they do. And in the covenant that's broke, Laban's like, I still want that blessing, even though you're not going to be here. Okay. So, quite a Torah portion this week. Matt, you look like you're raising your hand. You all right back there? Okay. So Jacob's moving on, and we're going to talk about that more next week. I don't know if I read this part. Okay, never mind. I got it. Good. I didn't miss that. All right. So, anybody try to read 1 Chronicles chapters 1 through 4? You did, Miss Nancy? You're such a trooper. Man, I can always count on you.
It took us 2 days.
2 days?
Two chapters.
Why did it take you 2 days?
Well,
We're trying to figure out who was who and who came from where and where, if there was any like interesting loopholes.
No, we knew if we spread it out,
Uh-huh.
we'd have to bunch up in Romans would have to be done like real quick. So we wanted to I don't know all the names and
Okay, that's interesting. I like it.
I'll take the first 3 names.
The first 3. What about you, Jared? Did you read it? I know, early in the week, and you were like, you were like, whatever. Yeah. So, all right. Here's a test. Say what?
3 days.
3 days. Here's a test. I got chapters 1 through 4. 1 Chronicles chapters 1 through 4. So what? First test is, why do I have a globe up here? From 1 Chronicles chapters 1 through chapter 4. Why did I put a globe up here? Specifically looking at the continents. Okay, Miss Nancy?
Name the other Fertile Crescent.
Nope. I mean, that's actually, yeah, that actually probably would work because there's a lot. So that brings up a really good point. She said Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crest, right? Nope, this is just, I didn't pick this area for any particular reason. It was just the globe, right? And showing some continents. But that's interesting because there is, in this 4 chapters, there is a lot of, right? And in genealogies in general, there's a lot of like history, right? And if you find yourself, like I told you guys before, I used the Blue Letter Bible, the David Guzik, right? He's a Christian commentary guy. I don't agree with even stuff he says about Romans that we're going to read here later, but he does a real good job of just kind of hitting the high pieces of the scholarly understandings of interesting stuff. Is that Sarah calling? She's probably saying that online thing's messed up. So anyways, there's cool things to be found given a lot of effort, and people have done that effort for you, so don't try so hard. You can go and look and see. Like, for instance, you go look over here and you see David's family and his lineage. He has a son. He has 2 sons with the same name. One of the ideas that the scholars say is the one died young, and then he named another one after him. Okay? And there's things that you'll read. Listen, it is perfectly okay in a scholarly fashion, especially if you know that they're just surmising or supposing something, right, based off of trying to connect dots. Perfectly okay for us to disagree, right? But again, if just in general, you're going to look to see the history of like who these people lived at this point, and then these people lived at this point, right? And one of the things that I noticed was that the commentators, a lot of them call whoever wrote this the chronicler, because it's Chronicles, right? The chronicler is actually piecing things in a certain way intentionally to make some big general points. Okay, I'm not going to go through that entirely today. I'm just going to pick 2 things out of chapters 1 through 4 that I just wanted to highlight. Okay, one of them has something to do with blessings, obviously, right? Right. In this case, not so much blessings problems, but this person had the foresight to know blessings can bring problems, and I need you to make sure to help me handle my blessings that you give me. Anybody realize who that person was in these first 4 chapters? It's like the weirdest thing. You're going through all these lineages, and all of a sudden, smack dab in the middle of chapter 4, you got this dude who gets talked about. Back in the day, you wouldn't remember this, Deegan, because it was definitely before you were born. Back in the day, some Christian pastors and authors got real famous and probably rich off this couple of verses, 2 of them particularly, in this person's name. Jabez, right? Does anybody remember? All of us older folks remember? Jared, you may not even remember this. The Prayer of Jabez, the book. Yeah. So this is what Jabez says in the middle of chapter 4. Now, here's another interesting part. Read chapter 4, and what I found, I was looking for all the commentators to explain this to me, and I couldn't find it. So if anybody finds an answer to this, I don't want to make one up, right? Let's if you know and find, if there's some commentary in your Bible that says something, but you read the lineage and the genealogy, it says Jabez was more honorable than his brothers, Jabez is not here and Jabez is not here. Go back a bunch of lines, right? And you don't see the name Jabez. Now, granted, couldn't be a no big deal type thing, because how often did people go by multiple names? And how often are they identified in Scripture by multiple names? But the thing is, nobody points that out. I was kind of like, okay, Jabez, who are Jabez's brothers? Who are Jabez's brothers? And I went and looked, and none of the names before, none of the names after looked like they fit Jabez. So not only is this prayer and these words in the middle of a genealogy, but they look to be in the middle of genealogy that I can't identify where Jabez even came from. He could have been a Gentile for all I know. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so Jabez was more honorable than his brothers, and his mother named him Jabez, saying, because I bore him with pain. Now Jabez called on the God of Israel. See, maybe he was not in the lineage, just mentioned here, because the chronicler was like, oh yeah, I got to talk about Jabez. He lived during this time period. Jabez called on God of Israel, saying, on the God of Israel, saying, oh, that you would bless me indeed and enlarge my border, and that your hand might be with me. So any blessings without God with you could end up in a bad spot, and Jabez knows that. What do I mean by that? Can you get blessed and not handle it correctly? Absolutely. Think about it. Come on now. And I know playing the lottery is gambling, and I'm not trying to compare, but think about people who come across millions of dollars really fast, really quick, right, without actually having to work for it. I'm not saying everyone, but, right, how many horror stories do you hear? Somebody that lived in the trailer park wins the lottery or gets a huge unknown, family inheritance, and it ruins them. Jabez says, not only do I need you to enlarge my border, but I need you to be with me, and that you would keep me from harm. Other versions say, what's our prayer? Protect us from all evil. Protect us from all evil. Protect me from all harm, all evil. So that it may not pain me. And God granted him what he requested. Boom. That's it. Now we go back to lineage. What? That's crazy. And yeah, I agree. The book, The Prayer of Jabez, and the way it was written, and the way the guy talks about it, it's a good book. I ain't trying to put it down. And it's a good message, because this is a very interesting place in Scripture. And Jabez was heard, right? He was heard, remembered and heard. Okay? Remember what our title is. Jabez was heard, and he got a blessing, and he had the wisdom enough to pray to make sure the blessing wasn't a problem, and that he could be successful in doing whatever it was that God had for him. There is rabbinical tradition that this is Othniel, that Jabez's name is Othniel. Does anybody remember who Othniel is? Probably not, because we only mentioned him I did mention him, but it was passing, real quick passing. He's one of the judges in the book of Judges that we just sort of breezed over. He's one of the judges after Joshua that actually did a good job. Go figure. He enlarged the borders because he kept on doing what God said to do, taking over the land like they're supposed to and getting rid of the bad people. Right? So enlarged the territory and then said, God be with me and keep me from harm so that it may not pain me. All right? That's an idea. That's their commentary, and even then they don't all agree on that. It's like one rabbi said that he thought that was the case. So, yes, ma'am.
There's a rabbit trail I want to ask.
Now or later?
I'll throw it out there and you can say.
Okay.
Later.
Okay. That's what we do anyways.
In this time frame that we're talking about here,
Mm-hmm.
even the people who did not believe in Yehovah, Yahweh,
Mm-hmm.
they saw that those people who followed him walked in his power.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
At what point in the history of the world did even the enemies stop seeing that power?
Ooh.
Because today, who
Okay.
thinks that Christians, quote unquote, believers in Jesus Christ, really have power and really want to be near it? I mean,
Yeah. So that's a.
because even these infidels Mm-hmm. He saw the real power. But this guy had dealt with demons
Yeah,
in the
so
jungles of Africa, but he recognized the true power of the God of the Christian.
the blessings, so to speak. Power, I'm not trying to disagree with you. Power just, and it is power, I agree. But that's what we're
in America, nobody has that mindset.
So I'm not going to challenge that.
Do we
We
walk
gotta-
in that power?
We got to think about it. And
Why
and
don't we?
and it's a good question. Okay? And we can
You can leave it alone.
No.
Throw it out there. Quit-
we will come back to the word power and why do we not walk in that kind of stuff and all those kind of things on another day. But I want to say from the point of, let's just say, the blessings piece, right? And seeing that God is with them. So, yes, obviously power, right? And being afraid of it, even in some cases, right? With Egypt and
Not
things like
they
that.
have power, but the God they serve
That's right. It's powerful.
surrounds them with power.
Totally
and
agree.
A cloud of fire. And
Right.
that's what,
Yep. Oh, yeah. No. So that is, if you look at the history of this concept that we're even talking about today, of blessings, right? And the people walking in blessings. You'll see that short of like the Mount Sinai piece, right? And that time frame, which is what we're talking about with Jabez, and we're also talking about with some of those other nations, follow the decay, right, of the people of Israel. And they do. Think about it. They go down to the point to where, like, there's no more Elijah or Elisha. You got Jeremiah, definitely prophesying, and he was a prophet. But like Stephen says, they killed all the prophets. You know what I'm saying? So yes, was their light being hidden or snuffed out to where the world now doesn't see even? And now the world, even at this point, has the opportunity to look into, I wouldn't say curse, but definitely ignore the God of Israel. Oh, absolutely.
But God himself became carnal, incarnate, walked on earth, and now he can live inside of us, but I don't see powerful leaders around me recognizing the God, Yahweh, as being all-powerful.
What do you
But
mean?
he back then did.
Well, yeah, but again, I think you're probably, what you're doing is you're giving a little bit too much credit to, you got to think of the timeline. There's a point in the history where it takes Nebuchadnezzar being right next to Daniel. You understand what I'm saying? To realize and to see Daniel and see the power in Daniel's life and the things that happened to Daniel and to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, for him to then say, I see that the God of Israel is the one true God. Right? But before then, guarantee you, as he's walking out of Jerusalem with all the temple stuff, he's saying, who's the God of Israel? Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? So like that's what I'm trying to say is like, you got different types of that perspective of people like we've been talking about even with Laban, right? Seeing the blessings, right? You got different people basically at different times seeing it. It's not so much, now don't get me wrong, you're right. Kings, Abimelech, all these other people, they saw the blessings. They saw what Abraham walked in. They saw all that stuff. But to guarantee you, we can, and it brings up a really important point, we can ruin our witness very quickly, regardless of the miraculous or the power, demonstrated in our life. I mean, just in general, not loving someone, right, can be terrible, right? But yes, I would agree with the idea and the sentiment of the fact that, yeah, I'm not blaming God, and I definitely would blame his people, right? But at the same time, I'll tell you this, my experience is that a lot of people just don't know what is or isn't going on in the name of God in the earth today. And when they do find out, right, like they get transformed and changed, guarantee you. They do see the same God of Israel that those kings recognize, right? Just unfortunately, it's not, oh my gosh, all of Egypt's dead, right? Oh my goodness, there was a pillar by day, pillar cloud, a cloud by day, a fire by night, right? And some some 20 different Bedouin tribes saw that and went and told everybody else that. So yeah, I would agree with you, parting of the Red Sea or any of that kind of stuff, right? Yeah, that's not necessarily done in that magnitude, right? But I will say that there is definitely a place and a piece for that, both the power, the presence, the part of who, and it's really important. Think about it. I was like, today I was going to actually talk about and say, and I've said this before, right, about the like you can go into a room, have you ever come across somebody, or I've been in a situation or circumstance where just walking into the room, it was more peaceful because that person was there, right? And you could tell, I could tell that it was because they were, more prayed up, more, and I wasn't, I'm not coming against myself, right, or trying to judge any of us, but I am saying I have seen what happens when somebody really truly is focused. It can just change the air of a room, right? I could see the difference in just somebody in a moment having the right attitude versus the wrong, right? Just in an instant. So yeah, today we get to a place where, yes, the world, and this brings up a really good point. This becomes important towards the end of what I wanted to touch on today. Okay? I'm just gonna rehash, because tomorrow is the day of first fruits, right? Based off of what we talked about in the counting and stuff, and I'm gonna cover some things from what we talked about during Passover real fast. Maybe hopefully clear up some confusion. Either way, when we get there, right? I want to revisit this point we're talking about. And that point is not so much even how much an individual loses their witness, but how is it that, we'll misrepresent God's awesomeness and how things are connected, even in just the black and white of the letter of the word, because we get all foolish and we celebrate and worship God the way he did not intend for us to, right? And we say things like 3 days and 3 nights, Friday to Sunday, right? And I'm not trying to make fun of somebody, but I am trying to warn people. That is a place where if we jump too fast, too quick, it's kind of like the discussion we've been having. I'll go here too, and it's important also for this conversation. It is not wrong, and I'm frustrated with some people that I love who say, Easter and Christmas don't have any pagan connections. They're wrong. That is foolish to say, scholarly foolish to say. But it is not wrong to want to correct misgivings of information that keeps getting spread across the Messianic movement that is not true. Because if the boy cries wolf enough, right, we're not going to be able to identify the real wolf, okay? So if we're making connections here that aren't existing, but we know there's connections here that do, we just need to correct. That's all we need to do. We just need to course correct our viewpoint. But the problem is everybody on every side wants to overcorrect. And that in itself takes away from who God is and his awesomeness. And it does make us look foolish. Man, Miss Becky, goodness gracious. Now, you have to tell me why I have a globe up here. It ain't going to take long. You were starting to say it, Miss Nancy, before we got moved off track.
It also mentions Peleg.
Yeah, Miss Nancy. Woo! Okay, again, I can always count on Miss Nancy. Peleg, right, when he was born, during his life, it says that the earth, right here, two sons were born to Eber. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Okay, so some biblical scholars say that the earth being divided meant Babel. Doesn't fit Peleg's time frame and where he was born before, well before Babel. Even in the book of Genesis, if you go back to Genesis, he's in chapter 10, Babel starts in chapter 11. And you could say, they're close to each other. But what I believe this is speaking of is talking about that the earth was actually divided, right? Meaning, you guys know we've talked about the flood account, right? And I believe in and have for years loved to study and continue to study what's called the hydroplate theory. Basically, the fountains of the deep, right, are what caused the plates of the earth to move. Well, during Peleg's day, right here in 1 Chronicles chapters 1 through 4, the earth was divided, meaning separated and kind of settled out, is what I believe. Now, say what?
Pangea separate.
Yep, Pangea. Now, I have an interesting video. Whoops, not up there, because it's not supposed to be up there. That when we get done, right, and everybody's doing whatever they want to do, I'm going to play it, and you can watch it if you would like. But it's just Dr. Ben Crenshaw of the Creation Museum. I don't always agree with everything he has to say, but it's step 9, and he came up with him and the Creation Museum people, lots of PhDs, lots of really smart guys who've done a lot of actual field research. They actually came up with a model of the whole event, from creation to the flood, and where we're at today, why the earth is the way it is. He has some really good stuff to say in this video. And so I will definitely play that for you guys, where he talks about the days of Peleg and the breaking up of the earth, and what even atmospheric, electromagnetic stuff in the atmosphere would have done to, and he goes into the smaller explanation of why men would have lived longer before this happened. And the fact that we know that these things are still happening today, it's cool stuff. Anyway, sorry, got nerded out for a second. All right, here we go. Why do I have a picture of Peter's vision when we're talking about Romans chapter 13 and 14? Right?
It ain't about food.
That's right. Peter's vision is not about food. I would agree with you.
It's about them filthy, nasty Gentiles.
Man, just settle down back there.
They had to stay outside the fence, or else they'd be executed.
That's right. That's right. But we're not necessarily talking about that. But that is why I put this up here, was to basically be like, hey, listen. Every time if somebody mentions, food and what we can and cannot eat, they go to a couple places. This is one of them, Acts chapter 9, where Peter has his vision of the animals. I think it's 9, right? Did I get that right? I think I got it right. But where are we at? We're in Romans chapter 13 and 14. Now, Romans 13, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on. Like I always say, I encourage you all to read the reading for sure. Study it out for yourself. Romans chapter 13 in the first part deals with authority and obeying or submitting to the government authorities that are around you. A lot of people can take these verses and go all kinds of different directions with them, especially us Americans who are all about our freedoms. Okay? I believe if you read it and you read it in the context of what was going on during that day, basically Paul is saying to all the people, no, you are not in God's favor by being a zealot. All right? He's basically saying, in essence, in summary, right, the government authorities that are around you are obviously God allowed, for sure, if not God appointed. And you pay taxes to them for this reason, and short of them telling you to bow down and worship an idol, which they do eventually in the early church history, they start doing that, right? And the Christians very politely and kindly say no, and they say, okay, we're going to kill you, and the Christians say, okay. That's pretty much the way it went down. I just believe Paul is sitting here saying, he's just kind of trying to contrast the issue of the day, and the issue of the day was we need to take over the government, run Rome down. And Paul's like, listen, God's going to do what he's going to do, and everything is in his timing. And then he just flips script in chapter 13, talks about authority, obeying the government, realize God's allowing it, don't freak out, don't act like you got control over this, because you don't, because only God does. And then he goes from there, and it's like, hey, just want to let y'all know, the law is love, and love is the law. Right? Basically, the second half of chapter 13, and what did we do when we were the Sunday worshipers who didn't think the law was important? We read the second half of chapter 13 and said, see, the only thing you got to worry about is love. And that's not what he's saying there. He's saying that, look, love is the most important thing. It's right here in the Torah, in the commandments. right? These 4 commandments, these 5 commandments are all about love. And they hang on what Yeshua said, the one big general, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Paul's just trying to show them nothing can be done without love, including Torah. But your perspective, you can try to read this and be like, oh yeah, see, all I gotta do is love people. No, there's a way to love people. God tells you, and so does Paul, what that way is. Okay, sorry. Man, got me all riled up, Miss Becky. It's good. It's good. It's good. Now, I want to conduct an experiment. I was about to say something else. I want to conduct an experiment real quick. Because I want to show young people, you need to listen, because I heard you talking to Ben this morning, your friend guy, and you were saying all kinds of silly stuff and getting things kind of mixed up. So pay attention instead of doing birds with your hands, because that's what y'all were doing just now, I think. Turtles, sea turtles, right? Is that what it was? Sea turtles swimming in the ocean? Oh, my goodness. You need to tell these children, Bill, about the days of the Baptist church when you had to sit there with your hands in your lap, and if you moved, you got smacked. Yeah. So, here's my experiment. Who's got their NASB? I need somebody with an NASB. You got an NASB? Right there? Okay. All right. Let's see. I want you to go to, actually, not Romans. I want you to go to Mark chapter 7. Got it? Okay. Now, I talked about Mark chapter 7 during our Passover celebration. This is where the Pharisees come to Yeshua and they say, hey, why do your disciples violate the tradition? They even admit it's the tradition of the elders and not wash their hands before eating bread. And Yeshua gives them a really good teaching. He says, well hath Isaiah the prophesied of you hypocrites, as it is written, this people honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. Howbeit in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines, like you must do. That's what doctrines means to any Jew off the street during this time frame. It meant what you must do, right? A teaching of the doings. The commandments of men. Right? So I talked about this. It's really important. Traditions are not a problem. As long as traditions don't come at me saying this is the commandments of men. And I said as well, because remember I was a little bit of a hypocrite. I went back and forth and I talked about the temple service, which I believe, like a lot of other people, especially Messianics, was prophetically put in place by David and Solomon. Because one day Yeshua was going to triumphantly enter Jerusalem. He was going to be tested like the lamb is tested. Now that's Torah, actually. Sorry, it's not. But he was also going to be crucified during the time they're throwing blood all over the altar and they're killing these lambs and all of these things in the way that they did. And then the first fruits, how they went out and marked the barley before they harvested, 3 days before they harvested it. Just like the graves were marked of the people who came out and were seen amongst everybody, like it says in Matthew chapter 28, verse 57. We'll read that here in a little bit. We're going to talk about that in a second. Now, he's getting on to them. He's telling them, teaching as you have to do commandments of men. For laying aside the commandment of God, ye hold the tradition of men as washing of pots and cups and many other such things, like things ye do. All right, and then he goes on, but you reject, and he even shows how they don't honor their father and mother. He says you let people get off without having to take care of their parents, because you say if you give it to the temple, your parents can just sit there and die and not have anything to eat. Right? And he's like, that's not what the Ten Commandments says. Is everybody with me? I don't want to lose nobody. Okay, Brandy. Read 18, 19, and 20.
And he said to them, are you so lacking in understanding also? Do you not understand that whatever goes into a man from outside cannot defile him? Because it does not go into his heart, but into his stomach, and is eliminated? Thus he declared all foods clean, is in parentheses of my version here.
Oh. Thus he declared all foods clean. Go ahead.
And
Now, I'm going to read a little more. But I got my King James Version. Okay? Authorized King James Version. And he saith unto him, Are ye so without understanding also? Do ye not perceive that whatsoever thing from without entereth into the man, it cannot defile him? Because it entereth not into his heart, but into the belly, and goeth out into the draught, purging all meats. And he said, That which cometh out of the man, that defileth the man. For from within, from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornication, murders, theft, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness, and all these evil things come from within and defile the man. Notice, I did not have a parenthetical statement that said, making all foods clean. And if you go and you look, right, all of the newer versions that have this parenthetical statement, they don't, even in the, now it's possibly changed, but 15 years ago, even in the NIV, when they tried to make a concordance for the NIV, which was very hard for them to do because they had changed so much stuff, it was so not a transliteral translation. It wasn't word for word, right? It was idea for idea. And I'm not hating on that. And I'm not trying to say Moses read the King James. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to tell you is, yeah?
The NIV on the phone, the app, it does say in parentheses, in saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean.
That's right.
So they have changed.
So, yep, no. It's been in the NIV the whole entire time. What I'm trying to tell you is that when you went to go look up any of those words in the NIV concordance, it said NIG, not in the Greek. So what's happened since then is where people said, oh, we wouldn't just have put that in there. It came from something. Where did it come from? One Greek manuscript of like a copy of a Greek manuscript of like closer to the Dark Ages or Middle Ages, so well away from some of the ones that we have and read, most of them that we have and read from Mark. And in the side notes, somebody wrote, he was saying all foods are clean. Somebody's commentary and reading this passage is, and Jesus was saying all foods are clean. Go ahead, Olivia, before I really make my point.
Is that even had it said that doesn't mean pig is talking about food and pig is not food. Because that doesn't mean you can eat bacon because that's not even food that they're talking about.
Right. So I would agree with you, and I definitely will agree with you here in just a second, but I don't believe that's the case. What I believe that the Greek statement was saying was that he's saying anything we eat today in the Dark Ages while they were making that thing is okay to eat. He's freed us from the law.
I'm sorry, what did Olivia say?
She said that food, she made the common viewpoint that food, if it says food, it would not even consider pork food. Like even that parenthetical statement. I agree with you 100% on any time Yeshua or his disciples use that word. I believe that parenthetical statement, though, actually came from a Greek scribe or somebody who was trying to declare, see, this is where Jesus, he was trying to use that as to say, see, I can eat anything because it's all lawful. Yes, ma'am.
In the complete Jewish Bible, on the Bible app, it also has that parenthetical.
Yeah, because for the same reason, because even David Stern's not willing to fight the fight to be like, well, it's an ancient Jewish script, right? Or an ancient, Greek manuscript. And if I'm going to cite one, I got to cite them all. No, you don't cite one random footnote in a Greek manuscript. Now, since then, I would not be surprised. I say since then, since when I looked into this many years ago, I would not be surprised if they found more Greek manuscripts or some copy in Latin or something that carries that footnote over into the language of the verse. All right, I would not be surprised. But regardless, textual criticism, it's not what the King James writers had. It's not in most of what we have and translate from Mark. Like when I say most, I'm talking like 1% of what we have that we use to put the book of Mark together has that parenthetical statement in it. 1%. So of course, if I'm a certain early Christian group or I'm afraid to buck the system, I'm going to include it in my version. Go ahead, Miss Nancy.
The author of Mark
Mm-hmm.
was writing to a Jewish audience,
That's right.
so he didn't have to explain those laws because they already ate kosher or Levitical.
So besides the author of Mark,
Yeah.
who was Yeshua speaking to?
He was speaking to fellow Jews.
Yeah, would they have at any point in time thought that the cleanliness issue he was dealing with here was, like Olivia said, bacon or shrimp? Right, it was a non-issue. And the most important part that gets missed because this passage is used so often to talk about this issue of food, Yeshua is making a huge, like exclamation mark point on even eating biblically legal, right? He's saying, just like he says on the Sermon on the Mount, it's not good enough for you to just say, I ain't touched another woman, if you're always lusting after another woman in your heart. It's like you've already committed adultery. Because where does everything stem from? The heart, not the stomach, right? Yes, does eating unclean have biological ramifications? Is that a proven fact? It is, and people ignore it, which is crazy to me, because it's scientific. It's not even like, and I have friends who are constantly always about it, but pigs today are so much cleaner. I'm like, get the most well-raised farm pig and take it and compare its meat to the most well-raised farm-raised cow. Biological impurities are unbelievable. We're talking like in the millions times different between the two animals. It's insanity for anybody to argue that foolishness. Yep, I'm saying it on video. Anyways, hold on. Let me not on video. It's recorded. Go ahead, David. I might need to calm down a little bit.
I've talked about that with friends up at work, and they're like, they're so much cleaner. Oh, you still have the ER on the end. That doesn't mean clean.
Yeah.
Cleaner does not mean clean.
That's right. So, and I'll guarantee you, the wild boars that they're killing in Texas and putting on a skewer and cooking and eating the meat off of it is also going to be 10 times more cleaner than your sausage McMuffin that you're eating from McDonald's. I guarantee you. Those pigs live in their own poop all day long, all the time. They might as well be drinking it, and you're eating them. Yes, ma'am.
When I started my health journey, I would share with my students what I'd learned. And in my AMP2 class one day, this older gentleman, I'll use the word older, he was in his 40s, he wasn't as old as me, but he was starting over in life, and he said, can I share my story? He said, I was an FDA inspector, and I had to go inspect a pork plant.
Oh, no.
And he said there was 3 tiers of pigs. The top tier got food, they lived on a grate, their feces went through to the second tier, and that was their food, and their feces went through to the 3rd tier. He said, I will never, ever eat pork in my life, and I'm changing my career, that's why I'm here. And if you go to any alternative holistic doctor, they'll tell you if you want to heal from a long-term situation that you've dealt with, you've got to stay away from pork, quote, seafood.
Yeah. And you even have to be careful about what fish you eat today.
They're all.
And what meat and what
they're
beef
all
you have to eat today.
sacrificed,
That's right.
And they eat decomposing material.
That's right.
And they automatically start making your body acidic.
So, yeah, absolutely. And which is terrible for you. Now, we're talking about Yeshua's day, though. Okay? And I think those things were still true to an extent. I think they're way worse today than they were back then, but they were definitely still true. Okay. Now, here's the key that I don't want us to miss. It is about, okay, so if we were to take and actually go ahead and say, no, he wasn't talking about this whole cleanliness, washing of hands, what's clean, unclean type deal, right? Let's say he's actually talking about like eating unclean food, which is not what he's talking about, right? But let's say he was saying, hey, the unclean food that somebody puts into their mouth, it doesn't defile their body. It's the fact that already in their heart, if they knew better and they put it in their mouth, they're intentionally, purposefully ignoring God's commandments. It's still a heart issue, right? It's a heart problem. Now, let's go back to Romans chapter 14, okay? And in Romans chapter 14, we have the most messed up, poorly translated pieces. And I'm not even going to spend a whole lot of time. It's going to be real easy. All right. Him that is weak in the faith receive ye, but not to doubtful disputations. For one believeth that he may eat all things, another who is weak eateth herbs. Other translations say vegetables. There are and have been groups of people, today they're called vegans, vegetarians, and everything else, but even especially inside of the Jewish faith, who believed, especially because of the way things were in the markets, that the right thing to do was to eat only vegetables. And then they would argue, there's some today, Messianics today, who argue that's the way it was in the garden, so you should do it because that's the way it was done in the garden. I'm not, here, ready? I'm actually not disagreeing with them. Meat was only commanded to be eaten, right, after the flood, right? Or you could even say even permissive to be eaten. I'm sure they were beforehand, but I'm just saying. That's the first mention of it. God said food was every seed-bearing plant. He didn't say your chicken, right? And even the egg. Which one came first? I don't know. No, I know which one came first. Yeah, I know. I'm just being silly. Okay, so anyways, the point being, I'll give those people who believe that, including believers, including the people Paul's talking about here, right? But his point is, you can eat meat. It's okay. Don't beat up on people because they don't or because they do. Either way. Because those things aren't about what we're supposed to be about. Olivia. Say what? Yeah, because it's a conscience issue, and he ends this chapter with that point. Okay? Let's see, let's keep going. We'll come back to what Olivia just said. Who art thou that judgest another man's servant? To his own master he standeth or falleth. Yea, he shall be holden up, for God is able to make him stand. Ready? Here's the next one, verse 5. One man esteemeth one day above another, another esteemeth every day alike. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. And what do arguers against Sabbath say? See, no day is more important than the other. Keep reading in context. Just keep reading in context. He that regardeth the day regardeth it unto the Lord, and he that regardeth not the day to the Lord, he doth not regard it. He that eateth, eateth to the Lord, for he giveth God thanks, and he that eateth not to the Lord, he eateth not, and giveth God thanks. For none of us liveth to himself, and no man dieth unto himself. He's specifically talking, and we have tons of historical proof about this. Different sects of Judaism and different even sects of Christianity way later said we should always fast on blah day. And there's different reasons why they argue. So that's why, in context to esteeming a day, he says one man eateth to the Lord and the one man who doesn't eat does that to the Lord. And he basically is saying, listen, if that's how... He's literally saying, if that is how you feel led to do, that is your faith is that God has told you this, but this man's faith is not. Don't hate him because he's not doing it. That's between you and God, and what he does is between him and God. In concerns to things that are not obviously specific commandments. What day you fast, or what day you should fast, and whether or not you should eat only vegetables or eat other stuff. Okay. And then he says the most important part is like, hey, listen, everything you do, you're doing because you liveth not unto yourself, but you live unto God. Okay? Quit getting bent out of shape over this stuff with each other. And then this is where he talks about it is neither like. He goes on to say, right, in verse 21, he talks about how it is good neither to eat flesh, nor to drink wine, nor anything whereby thy brother stumbleth, or is offended, or is made weak. Hast thou faith? Have it thyself before God. Happy is he that condemneth not himself in that thing which he alloweth. And he that doubteth is damned if he eat, because he eateth not of faith. For whatsoever is not of faith is sin. So, if
you have in your faith, you believe this is what God has told you to do, then you better do it, right? And on top of that, realize that's between you and God. That's a part of what you believe. Do not turn around. If you're the guy who does eat meat, do not look at your brother who can't stand the sight of meat and be like, this jerky sure is good, buddy. Want some? Right? Don't tempt each other. Don't put something in front of somebody. If you know somebody doesn't eat meat, don't tempt them with meat, because they feel convicted about doing that. Right? Yeah. And literally, hold on. I want to show the connection. He says, and this is where people also get real. I know and persuaded by the Lord Jesus. Some versions say that literal by is through the Lord Jesus. That there is nothing unclean of itself, but to him that esteemeth anything to be unclean, to him it is unclean. Esteemeth means a lot of different things. It's not just decided, but it's basically reasoned, understand, knows, right? So just like Yeshua said about the food itself, it's not unclean. It's not the deal. The deal, especially now, more so now, is about what's in your heart. Am I trying? Oh man, I hate to be this way. I can't help it though. Am I trying to explain away some obviousness using some not so obviousness so that I can do what I've always done and so I don't have to change? Is that what I'm doing? That's a heart issue, right? This is not because I don't do this or I do things that are unclean. This is not my point. It's more of the doctrine point, the teaching of the do. Okay, I'm going to, at least at a minimum, if I have to stand up here, I may not always do the do, but I'm going to teach the right do. Okay? That doesn't mean I eat pork. I don't eat pork and I don't eat shrimp. Right? Just my point is I do other things that are not healthy or clean. Yeah. Do as I say, not as I do. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not standing up here like that. What I'm saying is I'm not sitting here reading the Bible trying to excuse my bad behaviors. Right? And I'm not sitting here trying to change just all kinds of very obvious things to fit so that I'm not weird and strange to everybody. I'm ready. I've been ready. Y'all know me. I'm perfectly okay with being weird and strange. And I've been that way for 16 years, ever since I was like, listen, the Torah is more, there's more to it, and I'm supposed to obey it, and I'm not supposed to eat just anything. That stuff's not food. That's simple. It was so simple, and I hate that it's so complicated. It really, truly is so simple, though. Anyways, let's just think about what we read from Yeshua, those red letters, what we heard from Paul, right? Nothing in and of itself is gonna. If I grab a pork chop, I'm not going to hell. Okay. But if I'm intentionally inside of my heart, knowing, my faith tells me, I know. I'm not convinced about Peter's dream. I'm not convinced about Romans chapter 14 saying I can eat whatever I want. None of that stuff. I've not been taught that. I know better. And then I try to figure out a way anyways to eat this because I know it's good and I just don't want to, No. Yeah. Then my heart's messed up and there's a bigger issue. And again, did you say I was going to hell? No. It may not mean a ticket to hell, but it definitely means a ticket to something, some problems. Potentially lots of problems. Okay? And a slippery slope. Right? So, yeah. I will say this, though. For us in this room, there's also a message to be caught here. And that is, it's not just for the pork eaters, all right? That is how we love people, love each other, especially in the Hebrew Roots Messianic movement, because one person thinks, nope, I am following this commandment. And another person says, man, you can't even follow that commandment. We've had that discussion in this group before, right? It's not even biblically capable of following that commandment. And the person says, no, this is my conviction and I feel this way. I will honor that, okay? Oh yeah. How many times have we talked about that? That circumcision of the heart. It's like, it is what it's about. It is a heart issue. It's the heart issue. What do you believe, too? Like, that's another piece. You got to realize, like, somebody really doesn't, I'm not, there are people out there who I can perfectly be like, look, man, you shouldn't be eating that stuff, but you believe the way you believe, right? Dangerous, though, still a slippery slope, but they better be careful because confusion will lead you astray.
Are you ready?
No.
Okay, here it is.
Hurry, Nolan, hurry.
Nancy, you say, "Oh, wretched man that I am."
What are you doing?
Well, that's the Reader's Digest version of what you just said. "Oh, wretched man that I am. What I want to do, I can't do."
Oh, yeah. You talking about the doings and the teachings and the doings? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I want to do the right thing, but I don't. The things that I don't want to do, I do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just read it.
I want to be careful, though. I don't want to.
I just read it digest the whole thing.
I've used that passage way too many times in my life. I need to stop and just be like, listen, Paul, why'd you give me an out? Stop giving me an out. All right. Like I promised. Won't take long. I had some funny, interesting interactions with people, right? With the calendar stuff. And I just wanted to maybe clear something up, leave this PowerPoint up here to talk about and look at. But I may have lost some folks during Passover, especially with the calendar discussion, because it is a difficult concept, right? Let me tell you, one of the conversations I had was quite interesting because the individual, and I will not name names, was like I still have to have dinner with this person and clarify where their confusion was, okay? Because what they were trying to say, so if this is the Holy Week during what I believe the year Yeshua was crucified. So what it would have looked like, right? Down to like, and I put this up there on the screen during Passover, down to the very day, right, of what events happened, okay? This would have been the month of Aviv, right? And there's all kinds of other details I'm not going to get into. But let's just say this is the month of Aviv. This is Passover time. He's coming into town. See the 10th up there of Aviv, right? Passover lamb chosen, right? Triumphal entry, okay? And then this would have been the night that him and his disciples were sitting and eating the Last Supper, rehearsing what I believe to be the blessing of Melchizedek with Abraham and Melchizedek, and Melchizedek blessing the bread and wine, which is also a shadow picture of Yeshua's coming, and is also while we have communion, and it's his blood and his body. Okay? And then on the 14th, that would have been Passover, and this would have been when he was taken before Pilate and everything else, crucified during the early afternoon, right? Put into the grave before nightfall in a rush by Joseph of Arimathea. Nicodemus comes along to help in the story. If you read all the Gospels together, you see there's a moment where Nicodemus does it, and there's a moment where Joseph of Arimathea and him go together to help prepare the body, right? Boom, first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And that's why I read all those commandments, was to show you from the Torah. 10th was when they were supposed to select the lamb, and they always did, all the way up until Yeshua's day. 14th, right, between the evenings, before nightfall, was when they were supposed to sacrifice the Passover lamb. And the very next day after the 14th, after the Passover lamb is sacrificed and eaten on the 14th, Moses, right, in both Exodus and all of the places, Exodus, Deuteronomy, even once in Numbers and Leviticus, says the next day was the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Right? And Jewish counting of time starts at night. When the sun goes down, that's the next day. Okay? And that's why you see these Gregorian calendar dates moved over and shifted. Now, the other key piece with the Day of First Fruits, right, is the way today that Jews see this week and read it is they say that the 16th, always the 16th is the Day of First Fruits, the day after the Sabbath. Because the 15th, right, see how it's colored a little bit, is a high Sabbath. Everybody follow me? Anybody have any questions? Okay. So the problem with that is you go later into the description of this wave offering and the counting of the omer. It tells you have to count 7 Sabbaths, and the day after the Sabbath is the 50th day. So what Sabbath is that talking about? Well, there's no other commands for any other high Sabbaths. It has to be talking about the weekly Sabbath. Okay? So, mathematically, the only way that works out where you end up on the 59th day being the day after the Sabbath, being Saturday night to Sunday night, right, is that means then when he gave instruction to start the counting after waving the offering, right, the first fruits offering, would have to be the day after, always the day after the weekly Sabbath that falls within this Holy Week.
So if the first fruits was the 16th, there would be 51 days, or would it be?
It wouldn't, right, so no. If you think about it, if it was on the 16th, right, count the 7 Sabbaths. You could get 7 Sabbaths, right? Once you got 7 Sabbaths, though, you would have to say the day after, then it says in Leviticus, the day after the Sabbath is the 50th day. Well, if I count 49 days from here, I'm going to come up to another Friday, right? So this can't be, that's the Sabbath, not the day after the Sabbath. So day 50 can't be a day after the Sabbath.
The way that I read Leviticus would, so it's going through the Sabbaths, and it mentions unleavened bread, and it mentions the 7th day of unleavened bread is a Shabbat, and then it goes into first fruits, and it says the day after the Sabbath, and so I always read that as meaning the 7th day of unleavened bread Sabbath, and then you start counting first fruits, because 7th day of unleavened bread is the last thing mentioned before first fruits is mentioned.
Okay, that's totally different than what I've said, or that's another way of looking at it. And again, the reason why that doesn't work is look, right? Like look here. Again, if this is the day 7, which it is, right, and that consideration, the day after the 49th day, the 50th day, can't be a day after the Sabbath. Now, here I'm going to read it to you so you see what I'm talking about. Boom, 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 boom. Sorry, give me a second, y'all.
So
Quick.
you're saying that the day after Sabbath is always meaning a weekly Sabbath?
Hold on. There's 2, and this is why it gets confusing. Watch. There's 2 mentions of Sabbath, and you've got to take them both, because if you don't take them both, you're going to mathematically get messed up. All right, ready? So the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at twilight is, and that word means literally in between the evenings. Okay? Some people argue that. I don't have a bone in that fight. I'm just saying the 14th day of the month is Passover day, and before dark, they're gonna sacrifice Passover lamb. Then on the 15th day of the same month, there is a feast of unleavened bread to Yehovah. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall have a holy convocation, Sabbath. You shall not do any laborious work. But for 7 days you shall present an offering by fire to Yehovah. On the 7th day is a holy convocation, and you shall not do any laborious work. Then Yehovah said to Moses, saying, speak to the sons of Israel, and say to them, when you enter the land which I am going to give you and reap its harvest, then you shall bring in the sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest. He shall wave the sheaf before Yehovah for you to be accepted on the day, this is where the issue comes into play, right? For on the day after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. Okay, now all the further instructions repeat this same thing. They just leave out the whole when you enter the land part, right? So the day after the Sabbath, you shall wave it. Ready? Day after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. Now on the day when you wave the sheaf, you shall offer a male lamb, 1 year old, without defect, for a burnt offering to Yehovah. So on first fruits, they offer a 1 year lamb as well, just like they did on Passover. Its grain offering shall be 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, offering by fire to Yehovah for a soothing aroma, with its drink offering 1/4 of a hin of wine. Until the same day, until you have brought in the offering of your God, you shall eat neither bread nor roasted grain nor new growth. It is to be a perpetual statute throughout your generations in all your dwelling places. And we know that they did that. Until they were ready to harvest that first thing, they did not, on those days, they did not eat until they waved the sheaf offering. They ate what they already had. You shall also count for yourselves from the day after the Sabbath, okay, we got the after the Sabbath again. From the day when you brought in the sheaf of the wave offering, there shall be 7 complete Sabbaths. You shall count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath. Then you shall present a new grain offering to Jehovah. So the 50th day has to be, according to Leviticus 23:16, it has to be a day after the 7th Sabbath that you just counted. You counted 7 Sabbaths, and it says count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath, then you shall present a new grain offering to Jehovah. And please don't take this the wrong way, Olivia, because I don't mean this towards your direction at all. But when I first heard about what the Jews did, where they took it after the day, they do it off the first Sabbath, right? You're talking about doing it after the 7th Sabbath, right? I was like, that doesn't, 23:16. Like, how do you fit that into 23:16? Because if I count 50 days from here, right? Or count 49, excuse me. So here's the first day. Feast concludes, 7th day, high Sabbath, right? Like you're talking about. Same thing I said to Jared. If I count 49 days, it mentions the 49 days and 7 Sabbaths. So let's say I get through 7 Sabbaths, right? And I'm at 49, I'm going to end up on a Thursday. Or on the, what is this? 5th day. 5th day of the week. I'm going to end up on the 5th day of the week. And therefore, if I started counting here, right, the next day or the day after, this ain't a Sabbath when I count 49 days from here. So it can't be a day after the Sabbath. And it can't be the day after the 7th Sabbath. So the only way this works, and here's perfect math, real good math, right? It really works this way. I'll tell you, there's only one place where this gets messed up, and it doesn't even really get messed up. It's just you could argue a certain point. I will always, if I start counting, so let's push 14th all the way to here.
So first fruits always just falls within unleavened bread on that weekly Shabbat.
On the week after, the day after the weekly Shabbat. It's always the day after piece. Yeah, and so day after, first fruits this year. Now, if I was to pull up, which I will, pull up this year's calendar, right, it gets really hairy. And this is where the question came into play. This is what becomes important. So I'm showing you this is the not rabbinically accepted, but it is definitely, there are multiple sects of Jews who agree with me. Like I told you guys before, I'm in the minority. Okay, because the only other large group of Jews that say, yeah, this is the way it's always been done, and they try to show through history and all kinds of things, is the Karaites. Karaite Jews, right, scripturalist only. They don't believe in keeping the rabbinical traditions. They believe that what I just said is exactly, yep, that fits. Leviticus 23:16, it's the only way it fits. You can't get the math any other way. I cannot count 7 Sabbaths, and the day after that 7th Sabbath cannot be 50 unless I do it the way I just described. Now, let's look at this year's calendar real quick. Don't have it in my PowerPoint, sorry. All right. This year's calendar, and this is where the question came in. So, does the 14th of Aviv, is it always on a Wednesday? Let me ask you this question. Is April 18th always a Sunday? What's today? Today is April the 23rd. Is next year's April 23rd going to be on a Sabbath? Okay. Everybody gets that? That's the Gregorian calendar, right? Everybody understands the years shift, the days of the months cause a shift. We got a leap year every 4 years. Everybody follow me? There's all kinds of reasons why it doesn't fit, right? Okay. So the Jewish calendar is no different, right? All right. So now I say that, let me ask you this question. That it was presented to me. What's wrong then? What's the problem with saying, just setting, hey, Friday to Sunday. Good Friday, we celebrate His resurrection every year. Friday we celebrate His crucifixion. Sunday we celebrate His resurrection. What's wrong with that? And when I told this person that it's possible some of the early church fathers started to establish this, may not have been too pagan. It may have just been because they were trying to be like, hey, every week or every year we need to have the same days, right? Like weekdays of this to fit, right? Is there anything wrong with that? I'll tell you what's wrong with it. I say no. In one breath, I say no. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's not what they did. Go back to the witness piece that we talked about earlier. I told y'all we were going to come back to it. Right? If I sit here as a scholar with a PhD and I literally try to somehow prove to somebody that the one sign Yeshua said he was going to give, 3 days and 3 nights in the earth, like that in the belly of whale, fits between Friday and Sunday, like, I'll say it like my teacher said it from the very beginning when I first heard this. Dude, that doesn't fly for a third grader, much less a guy with a PhD. So you're a Christian, like, professor, and you're looking at a worldly professor who obviously thinks you're nuts because you believe in Noah's Ark. And then you try to tell him Friday to Sunday, 3 days, 3 nights. Perfect. Fits perfect. To me, it was that simple. And I'm sorry if I'm being ugly. But for me, in the beginning, why? Oh, I lost you. You lost me. Why? Jared's trying to shut me up. Go ahead. No, you can't never shut me up. No, I'm just kidding. It's a joke. Why? I would have been perfectly okay, and I am perfectly okay with some concepts and idea of convenience, right, to make it land on some of the same days of the week so that the Holy Week at least looks the same. But we don't have a Good Wednesday. We got a Good Friday. And it's silly in my opinion, especially because they don't say it's because out of convenience. They say it's because it works. It doesn't work. One argument is he only says 3 days and 3 nights in one place. All right. This is this year's calendar. Some of you are looking at this probably going, wait, we celebrated Passover. Like, this is Passover on Sunday. We celebrated it on Saturday. Right? The reason why this happened this way this year was because the new moon wasn't seen at the same time that they had predicted. Right? And I did not make a big stink out of it or say anything about it because we were going to celebrate Passover as close to as possible to the right time on the 16th, because that's the time we had planned. And ain't no church was going to let us take the Family Life Center on Easter Sunday. And by the time I figured it out, I didn't figure it out until way late. I was like, I'm not even telling Jared and Sarah, right? So everybody can be mad at me, okay, that we were inaccurate. Now, here's the weird part, right? This is the day, if that's the case, and we followed the Michael Rood, Nehemiah Gordon, Karaite, Israeli New Moon Society, all these other people, we follow their logic, right, like they said, Sunday would have been Passover. Feast of Unleavened Bread would have started Sunday night, right? Count 7 days. You come back to, right, the 7th day being Sunday, which is also, Olivia, my big argument, Leviticus 23:16. It's also the day after the Sabbath within the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So not only is tomorrow the day of first fruits, because they didn't see the new moon in Israel, if you track that way. I know not everybody in here does. But it would also be a high Sabbath. Or did I say that already? High Sabbath and day of first fruits. And the end of Feast of Unleavened Bread. So that stuff gets sloppy, right?
Why is it first fruits on the last day of unleavened bread there, but it could have been...
Just because it's the day after the weekly Sabbath.
Y'all didn't start, okay.
See?
Tracked up, so you didn't have it.
Yep. And let's say we're like, hey, somebody saw the new moon. There's an argument. Well, we're going to keep Passover, right, like we did on Saturday night, right? So Saturday night, first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, high Sabbath. The last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, this is where it gets really messy, would have been the high Sabbath and the Sabbath. So now when's the day of first fruits? Still got to be the day after the weekly Sabbath. And guess what? Because I'm going to count 7 Sabbaths, and the day after the 7th Sabbath is going to be day 50. And it's going to be Shavuot. Right? It's now, the question was, right, that I even presented to you guys, why follow whatever pattern this creates every year? Why not just be like, hey, every year when we get to this point in time, we're going to celebrate Wednesday as the day he was crucified, and the Sunday of that week is the day he rose, because that's actually the week, the way it happened, during when I believe what the Scripture entails. Why not do that? That's right, because that's not how they would have done it. That's not how they would have done it, and that's not how they have done it, and I don't see any issue with keeping it tracking with the way the first fruits works and everything else. If somebody did do that, and that was the reason why they did it, to make it easier, I wouldn't be totally bent out of shape over that. That's just my opinion. But I have for years, and I'm going to continue to do so, celebrated all the events. Whether I did an event where I talked about how the Holy Week looked, and we talked about Wednesday for the days and the amount of days and time that he was in the grave, and that the next day, Sunday or Saturday night, was the first day of first fruits, where they harvested that grain. Remember I told you how crazy it was? Is this the sickle? This is the sickle, right? And they go out there and they make this big fanfare about it. While they were doing that, the stone was rolling away, right? And saints were coming around to many. Man, I wonder if one of those priests saw his great-great-uncle. You know what I'm saying? As he's harvesting that first fruits. Did he see his great-great-uncle? Yeah. Anybody got any other questions? You feel comfortable?
That was
Much better? I'm sorry. I tried. Some people get real upset. Some people get real upset when you try to set the record straight. And you try to be like, hey, and especially they just don't understand why you can't just go along to get along. And for me personally, I think inaccuracy in the way that you view things and you teach things takes away from the awesomeness of what God did. And think about the story and the way that I told it, right? At least at a minimum, right, we should definitely be, hold on, my mouth, talking about how the Bible describes those last days were. Where am I at? There I am. Oh my goodness, this is crazy. At least talking about, not that one. It's not what I wanted. Sorry, guys. Talking about how the Holy Week during the time that he lived, the Bible describes it. How it describes it. There it is. Thank you. And how the events took place and how they happened. And then, personally, individually, we all go and when, you celebrate the Passover, you think about his resurrection. When you celebrate the Feast of Unleavened Bread, you just think about, hey, getting the sin out of your life, right? And then when you come to the Day of First Fruits, you talk about his resurrection. And you realize there's not 3 days and 3 nights this year. Okay? This year, we don't have 3 days and 3 nights. One year, man, I'm going to be able to keep this so short because it's going to fall on a Wednesday, and I'm just going to be like, hey, look, this work just like this. And I'm not going to say anything else. Because the individual that had the questions, that asked me the questions, was basically real disturbed by this. They were like, it don't work. I was like, yeah, but that's because the 14th of the month's not always going to be on Wednesday. And they're like, okay, so then why not do the church thing? And I was like, well, because it's wrong. That's not how some people see it. They're like, it's good enough. And I'm like, no, it's not. And if we do it that way, then we really miss out on all kinds of really cool things. Anyways, like knowing he was crucified on the Passover and how that would have been. I just think about it. Hundreds of thousands of priests, or people of lambs, hundreds of thousands of lambs and hundreds of priests would have been insane. And it would have been really, really crazy for them all to witness. And
There
you,
was a TV show that was made. I can't remember. I have to look and see where it was, but it was a TV show that was based on
no.
you
Go
know,
ahead.
that time period right after Yeshua was crucified.
Yeah.
And it actually portrays that Passover situation with the priest slaughtering the lambs and stuff very clearly.
What?
Like,
Where's this at?
I'll try to find it and show it to you.
Yeah.
It's really, really rather graphic.
Does it have like hundreds of people, like lots of people in it? Oh, man.
Yeah.
Okay. I definitely want to see that. In blood. They would have had to have been. Go ahead, Nolan.
My parents went to one sunrise service. And you don't know what my mother said, I don't like you to.
Sorry. Hold on. Go ahead, Nolan.
My mother said that they went to one sunrise service.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they didn't go to any more is because my mother said, I ain't getting up that early no more. She said it was beautiful, but I ain't getting up that early again.
That's funny. I see where you come from. No,
I'll
I'm
tell you
just
later.
kidding. I'm just messing with you. All right. I'm ready to pray. You ready to come close us out? Give me a second. So I can get back to where we're supposed to be. It's gonna be all kinds of crazy for a second. Back to PowerPoint. Don't want this. All right, I'm gonna pray for us real quick before we close out. Did we already say bye to people?
No,
Okay.
I wasn't doing that part.
Brandy doesn't know what she's doing. I'll pray while we say it, and I'll do it while we say the blessing. All right. Ready? Father, we just thank you so much again for this day, for your Shabbat, for your times and your seasons where you reveal yourself to us. Father, just like I pray all the time and I ask you all the time, don't let us go without recognizing when you're moving. When you're moving in our lives and in our midst, when you're moving in the world, teach us all things through your Spirit. Show us the way. Comfort us when we get concerned and worried about things that are not to be our concern or for us to worry, that we just trust you. That at the most we get excited when we see how you align everything and you show yourself, the beginning from the end. Father, we just ask to be a part of that, be as much a part of that as we can handle. We just ask that you continue to bless everybody here. Help us have the wisdom to contain those blessings and to recognize any potential evil or harm that might be trying to come our way. Ask you to protect us from it and to warn us when we don't need to step to the left or we don't need to step to the right. We just thank you for this awesome, awesome time of celebration of the first fruits of your kingdom, of your heirs, your family, as we are adopted in and we become a part of the family. We just thank you for the time that it happened in the beginning, where it started, and we just celebrate and are so excited about what you've done since then